Wood movement was one of the topics that I was scared about the most when I started building furniture. Everybody talked about it, I've read about it, and I just didn't understand it. I was so afraid that my furniture would just explode on me because I didn't account for wood movement. I'm Fabi from Bau-Woodworks, and in this video I want to explain to you why wood moves, how wood moves, because you can actually pretty accurately predict how it will move with seasonal changes, and also show you how you can account for it in your furniture. So stay tuned. As we all know, a log is cut in the forest, dragged out of the forest, sawn into boards, and then put into a kiln to dry it, or also air dried. Then we have what we call dry lumber. But still it moves on us. The question is why? Because wood is a hygroscopic material. That means it can absorb moisture from its surrounding and also give away moisture. Even after kiln drying, the wood has not lost this ability to reabsorb moisture from its surrounding or give it to its surroundings. Wood is always striving for this equilibrium moisture content, where the wood neither gains nor loses moisture because of its surroundings moisture content. Because we have seasonal moisture content changes in our houses between summer and winter, the wood and the equilibrium moisture content of the wood changes from summer to winter. It is drier in the summer and more moist in the winter, usually. With this change in moisture content in the wood itself, the wood changes its dimension, which means it changes it actually in 3 different directions. Along the grain, which is called longitudinal, across the grain, which is called radial, and along the growth rings, which is called tangential. How much the moisture content between summer and winter varies depends on your specific location. For example, here in Germany, it varies from about 6% in the summer to about 12% in the winter. In the US, however, it's from around 4% in the southwest in the summer up to 14% in the southeast in winter. This is the reason that wood is kiln dried in Europe to another moisture content level than in the US. In Europe, it's between 8 to 12%. In the US, it's about 6 to 8%. So, for example, when a bigger lumber yard from the US imports kiln-dried lumber from Germany, they will still stick it in a kiln again to dry it down to their moisture content level from about 6 to 8%. So to be on the safe side, we will assume a moisture content level change from summer to winter from about 10%. This will give us plenty of safety and we will not have to worry on the furniture to crack on us. Let's have a closer look on how the wood actually moves along these 3 axes. Wood movement is actually a percentage game. So all the values we will talk now mean change in dimension per 1% change in moisture content. This means that a value of 1% means a change in dimension of 1%. For example, if you have a board that's 1 meter long, it will change 1% in dimension. That means 1 centimeter per 1 centimeter change in moisture content. And now we will have a look at the real numbers. The longitudinal change in dimension is actually the least. So along the grain, wood only shrinks per 1% change in moisture content for about 0.01%. I will give you a graphic where you can see the actual values for different wood species for all 3 dimensions. The longitudinal change is so small that you can neglect it in your furniture projects. Let's assume you have a board of 1 meter and you have 10% change over the seasons in moisture content. That means 0.01% times 10 is 0.1% change in direction. 0.1% for a 100 centimeter board is just 1 millimeter. So you can totally forget about longitudinal wood movement in furniture projects. Now, radial movement is across the growth rings of the tree, which means in a radial direction of the log itself. Tangential movement, however, is along the growth rings of the tree, so a tangent to the circles. Tangential movement is actually the biggest. It is about 0.27% up to 0.41% for the common wood species. Again, change in dimension per 1% change in moisture content. Radial movement, however, is about half of the tangential. It does vary for some other wood species, and here you will see all the species in a nice table. Feel free to make a screenshot of this and just have it around if you need it. If you think this a step further, that means that wood movement is highly influenced by how the growth rings are in a board. And to understand that, we differentiate 3 different cuts of wood. The most common one is a flat sawn board. A flat sawn board is just plain sawn out of a tree. The growth rings in the board run at an angle from about 0 to 30 degrees. So as you can see, it's going here. A quarter sawn board, however, has the growth rings running at an angle of 60 to 90 degrees. That means they stand almost up in this board like this. And a rift sawn board has the growth rings running at an angle from 30 degree to 60 degree. So they're almost going diagonally. These 3 different cuts of wood, they behave differently. A flat sawn board actually moves the most. As it dries, it wants to cup like this and also shrinks in the width of the board. Why does it cup and shrink? Because in the tangential movement, which is the biggest, it's bigger on this side than on this side. So here it moves less, here it shrinks more, so it will cup up like this and also shrink in the width. A quarter sawn board is actually the most stable cut. It will only shrink in the thickness here on this side. So it means it will slightly taper to the outside. A rift sawn board is also fairly stable, but it also will cup a little bit and shrink in the width. To identify which cut the board has, you can look at the end grain. At the end grain, you can tell the fastest. Here you can see the growth rings are running at a slight angle, so this is definitely a flat sawn board. Here, the growth rings are running almost 90 degrees to the face side. This means that's a quarter sawn board. And here you can see the growth rings are running perfectly diagonal, and this is a rift sawn board. Sometimes you can also tell from the face side which kind of cut it is. If you see these cathedrals, it's definitely a flat sawn board. On some wood species, you might see these ray flags. If you see ray flags, that is most likely be a quarter sawn board. And on a rift sawn board, all 4 sides have the same grain pattern because all growth rings are coming at an angle of 45 degrees. This makes rift sawn stock perfect for table legs or chair legs because you don't have the cathedral on one side and a quarter sawn side on the other. You just have 4 sides that look the same. Now let's have a quick recap on what we've talked about so far. Now wood moves because it absorbs and gives away moisture to its surrounding because it strives for this equilibrium moisture content where it doesn't gain more moisture nor loses more moisture. It changes its dimension the most about tangential axes, also along the radial axis, and not really significantly much about the longitudinal axes. Now with all the numbers we've talked about, does it mean for every project we have to get out a calculator, measure the moisture content and really go to town with it? No, it doesn't, but we have to understand this basic concept. That being said, I also advise you check out one of these wood movement calculators online. Just play with it a little bit to get a feel on how much wood actually moves in your project. Is it 1 centimeter? Is it just 5 millimeters? Is it 50 centimeters? Just go there, play a little bit, get a feel for it, and then you can most likely just guess how much it will move. I will link you a few of these wood movement calculators down in the description. There are basic construction methods that have been used for the last hundreds of years to account for wood movement in a solid wood furniture project. Now the 3 biggest factors for wood movement in your project is how dry is the wood you buy, where will your furniture live, and where do you build it. I only buy kiln dried lumber. That means my lumber I buy is around 8 to 12% when it leaves the kiln. Yes, it will absorb and give away moisture as it's sitting on the shelf at the lumber yard. And it will also do that when it's down here in my shop. So my shop is in a heated place, so it's pretty much the same moisture content in here as for the final place where the furniture piece will go in my house. So if you build your furniture piece in the garage outside, there's a higher moisture content, maybe around 15% or so, and you want to ship it somewhere, for example to the southwest of the US, where it's only 4%, your wood will move significantly more than in this case where I have my lumber here in my house already for building it. Also keep in mind that when you put your lumber from outside to the inside, it strives for the equilibrium moisture content in the wood. So it will most likely dry a little bit more when it's here in your house until it has reached the equilibrium moisture content. That means that it's smart to put your wood inside your shop or inside your house for a few days, a few weeks, even a few months, depending on how wet the wood is when you buy it, to let it acclimate and reach that equilibrium moisture content level in your location. If the furniture you build goes outside where there's a higher moisture content level than on the inside, then you know the wood is gonna expand. And in the summer, when the sun is shining on your outdoor furniture, it will contract again as it dries out. As I said, we will assume from here on a 10% change in moisture content for our indoor furniture project. If you build furniture for the outside, this value will be significantly larger. Okay, let's get to the first construction method. Let's assume we have a tabletop and we want to attach our base to it. If you just take your base and screw it to your top like this, we will have a cross grain joint. That means the grain of the top is running in this direction and the grain of our base is running in this direction. As we know, wood moves in this direction here and the base does not move in this direction. This means if we just screw it down like this, 1, 2, 3 screws, the wood in the top cannot expand and contract freely. It will crack eventually. To account for wood movement and hence still allow the top to expand and contract freely along this axis, but prevent it from warping or twisting, we can use oval holes. Just an oval hole where your screw goes in. It still holds the top to the base and it allows the wood to move freely in this slot. And of course, it's not smart to place the screw on one end of the slot. Place it in the center of the slot and you will be fine. If you've watched up to this point, I bet you like what you're seeing and you want to become a better woodworker. Now go ahead, subscribe to my channel and also hit that bell notification so you won't miss another video and you can be among the first to see the new content. It's free and now is the time to do it, and I will give you a second to do it. You did it? Alright, awesome. Let's continue. A second construction method is for panel glue-ups. When you glue up a panel and align all the growth rings in the same direction, which means the growth rings are going this way, this way, this way, and this way, your panel will cup significantly in one direction. It means it will cup down and actually create something like this, pretty big. But if you alter the direction, say like this, and also here like this, your panel is gonna stay flatter. It will create a little top like here, and then a bottom here, a top here, a bottom here. So it's just this wavy little pattern instead of one giant cup. Have you ever wondered why so many doors and drawer fronts look like this, with a frame and a panel in the center? It's because of wood movement. You have these rails and stiles around it, and then you have the panel in the center. The panel in the center is only glued into the groove on one side. And the groove on the top here is actually deeper than the panel goes, because then the panel moves across it with the most and can expand into the groove even further and contract in the groove, so you won't actually see it. If however we just take a whiteboard for this door front, we have to account for that by leaving a gap at the bottom and or at the top to allow for that expansion and contraction with seasonal moisture content level changes. If we don't do that, the door might get stuck in the opening. Where wood movement also is a big factor is with solid wood drawers. So this drawer is all solid wood, as you can see. Here the grain is in the same direction, so it expands and contracts in the width of the board. And this means the height of the drawer is going to change here. So if this is our drawer front opening, something like this, we have to leave a small gap between the top and or between the bottom and the opening, because this width is going to change with the seasonal wood movement. We do not have to leave a significant gap here or here because along the grain it's not going to change its dimension. If you build your drawer in the summer where it's drier, you know in the winter it's going to be wetter, it's going to expand, you have to leave a bigger gap for the seasonal wood movement. If you build your drawer in the winter where it's more moist, you know it's going to shrink in the summer, you can get away with a smaller gap actually. Again, if you know you're going to ship your furniture somewhere or it's going to live outside and change your moisture content, now you know how to account for that. The drawer bottom is actually pretty similar to a frame and panel construction. The frame is not going to change much in its dimension. As you can see in my example here, the drawer bottom contracted a little bit here and I did not leave enough room to allow for the wood movement. Now I have a small gap here. So I should have made the bottom a little bit wider to leave it in that groove here and maybe make that groove also a little bit deeper. However, usually you do make your bottom the other way around with the grain direction running this way. So it can expand to the back and usually you make it away so it sticks out at the back and it can expand and contract here freely and you don't have to worry about it. Now you might think, what's the deal with plywood? Now plywood is actually the industry's attempt of making wood that doesn't move. In German, for example, plywood is translated with Sperrholz, which if you directly transfer it to English means something like locked wood. Why locked wood? Because the grain directions between these layers of ply alters. One layer is going this way, the other way is going this way, the other way is going this way. By gluing them together in this panel, you get a pretty stable panel that does move a little bit in each direction, but not too much. In the construction with plywood and furniture projects, you don't have to worry about wood movement. If you need a fairly stable panel, you can use plywood. You can use plywood, example, for the back of your cabinets or also for drawer bottoms. And it makes a great drawer bottom because it does not expand and contract much about in each direction. If you've paid close attention until this point, you might have wondered, why is this not busting apart? Because here we also have this cross-grain glue joint. And on plywood, it's basically all cross-grain. Let's have a closer look on why they're not falling apart, even though they are cross-grain glue joints. As we know, this board is expanding and contracting in this direction, and this board in this direction. Particular to each other, and according to the theory, they should come apart. Why are they not? Because, remember, wood movement is a percentage game. And the width of the board here is so small that also the wood movement is pretty small. As a rule of thumb, you can get away with this kind of joint up to a width to about 12 centimeters. If it's wider than that, you might get into trouble. Plywood can be way wider than 12 centimeters. You can get it up to 2.5 meters or even wider. And still it's holding together, although there are cross-grain joints or cross-grain lamination going on. The reason why this is still holding up, because these veneer layers are glued on the whole surface together. So they basically lock each other into place, and there cannot happen that much expansion and contraction because each layer is holding the other layer in place. If you need a stable panel of a certain species, you can even make your own plywood, and it's not that complicated. You can make a very simple 3-layer plywood by taking a layer of veneer. This is a little bit thicker than a normal veneer, and I would not take this for an actual piece of plywood, but this is just to demonstrate it. Then as a center, you take a piece of MDF, and as a top, again, your veneer. You can glue these 3 layers together. It's important to have glue all over the surface and have a nice even pressure all over the board. Thereby the MDF is locking these 2 layers into place, and there will not be much expansion and contraction happening. I know this was a pretty deep dive into the topic, but I want to go over the key learnings you really have to take away when you deal with wood movement and want to build solid wood furniture. The most important thing here to take away is that wood absorbs and gives away moisture, and with it, it changes its dimension. The most wood movement is taking place along the tangential axis of the wood, which in a flat sawn board is its width. This means that if you have a cross-grain joint like this, you have to account for wood movement in some way. This can be in a number of ways. It can be by leaving a gap in the case of a drawer. It can be by a joint that allows for expansion and contraction, like a tongue and groove where the panel can float, as we have seen in the frame and panel construction. This can also be a sliding dovetail. You might have heard or seen that. This can also be just an oval screw hole where the screw can move in the slot. If you need a very stable panel or don't want to account for wood movement, plywood might be the way to go, and you can even make your own plywood. Right, I hope this helps you to build better furniture that won't explode on you because of wood movement. If you've enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel, and I hope to see you in the next one.